first thing that they did after the Revolutionary War that we supposedly won, this is where King George slipped in his Trojan horse. This would be giving the colonies the Northwest Territories. This was an area in the Ohio Valley that would eventually become Minnesota, Ohio, and Indiana, and parts of other states. What this did was this put the Continental Congress at the time in a quandary, because as we can see here, Article 4, well, this is Article 8 of the Articles of Confederation. It evidences that Congress does not have authority to directly tax nor make law within the republics of the United States of America. Congressional funding had to be requested of the state legislatures to be approved before collecting from the state citizens. In other words, Congress, if they need funding for something, they couldn't just go right to one of the state citizens, which was the type of citizenship available to Americans at that time under Article 4 of the Articles of Confederation. And let's see if I can roll this down. Here's the exact wording in the right there. The taxes for paying that proportion shall be laid and levied by the authority and direction of the legislatures of the several states, not the authority and direction of Congress. So that's how that proves it right there. Now, at the conclusion of the Revolutionary War, King George ceded the Northwest Territories to the United States of America under the guise of war reparations. But as I contend, it was his Trojan horse. Because what happened then is that the Northwest Territories were now owned by the United States of America, but they were not part of the original Confederacy. Indeed, at the beginning of the Revolutionary War, I'm sure that the people of those states were members of Congress had no idea that if we kick his butt, we're going to get some booty, some property. They just wanted their freedom. But this is where I contend that King George slipped in his Trojan horse. Because like I said, what it did now was, since this was not part of the original Confederacy but owned by the Confederacy, they had to decide what to do with it. They had won it together. Now, I say what they should have done is they should have taken it and split it in 13 pieces. Everybody take a piece and go their own way. Or they should have just made new states and just brought them right into the Confederacy. But that wasn't the agenda. What it did was it now gave the Continental Congress a reason, a smokescreen, to create legislation that would allow them to tax directly on a piece of land. That would be the Northwest Territories. And the idea was to eventually confuse people as to the difference between the United States and the United States of America. Because up until that point, the terms had been used interchangeably, and they did mean one and the same place. But as soon as what was titled the Ordinance of 1787 was passed, or the Northwest Ordinance, whatever you want to call it, that is interchangeable. All of a sudden, an ordinance for the government of the territory of the United States north of the River Ohio. Just as soon as they used the term United States for a government, what government? It had to be a new government. And that was at that point, this was basically the birth of the federal government. We're not taught that, because it would give away the fact that the United States and the United States of America are two different places. And to further prove that, you will see that Continental Congress now had gained the ability to tax directly without going through the state legislatures. Right here. Here's where it mentions to be a temporary government, be it ordained. Now, the word ordained, the base of ordained is to order. I already showed you where they didn't have the ability to order anybody to do anything. They had to ask. All of a sudden now they're ordering. The ordinance, or like it says, ordained. Another question it brings up here, for purposes of a temporary government. So when would the permanent one come in? Oh, that will come later. But
Chong, just before you carry on, because obviously I'm from the UK, and I have pretty decent knowledge of the history of America and so on, but the Northern Territories, or that particular district that they're talking about now, comprises what? What area is it that we now understand to be a state?
Well, it's Ohio, I think, Minnesota, Indiana, I think part of Wisconsin, Illinois. Yeah, it formed 5 full states, and I think part of Wisconsin, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know, but yeah, it was a chunk of land.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, the only reason I ask as well is because I wonder whether some of these, what do they call them, not the flyover states, but in the voting, there are certain states that seem to have a...
You're talking about territories or United States territories. They can send representatives to Congress, but they can take part in the discussions that are.
No, I don't think that's where he's going.
No, I'm talking about, not then, but this, I'm trying to relate to what's current. Every single voting
Yeah, they call them the
season,
flyovers, I think.
yeah, they do
Right.
have the flyover states, but for the purposes of voting, these are important states that have to be won. And Ohio always seems to come up. Why is Ohio so important?
I don't know. That's
Why
a good
is
question.
Indiana and Illinois so important?
It's usually
for
where
some of
they,
these?
it's usually where they start, right? It's Iowa. It's huge,
Yeah.
right?
There may be something to that.
And they talk about these, and this is usually where they are in very early, and they're a lot of political activities. You know, they're going eating pie and the
Caucuses.
Yeah, well, I don't really concern
Yeah.
myself much
Yeah.
with the political process here in this country because
No, I don't.
yeah.
But I just wondered whether
There's a
I don't
correlation.
know.
if there's a correlation between what is the current government,
There could
as
be.
you're alluding to, and the original states or the original territories that were then turned into states that were in fact the original government, and what the current government really only has power over. And that's why these states are so important. That's why they go to them first.
Well, they did,
Everything else out, if Florida is
There's
another
something
one.
missing. Yeah.
but there was a
Yeah,
way for them.
Florida's another one,
But there was a way in the ordinance built in for them to become part of the Confederacy once they reached a certain population amount, and they were able to apply.
Mhm.
So they are supposedly part of the Confederacy now.
Maybe
So,
The 2 reasons are, from my perspective, is because they're always on the verge of going red or blue, and the amount of electoral votes because of the amount of people that are there. Like, that's
Okay.
why they're always in play. Because it's like tug of war, you know, so if you're close to the edge, back and forth over the line.
Yeah, so it wasn't necessarily anything
I don't think it has
potentially
anything to do with
with
it.
history.
14 article. Okay, Article 7 of the
I
ordinance
think
of
you might be onto something.
Okay, yeah, like I said, King George gave that property to the Confederacy to give the Continental Congress an excuse or serve as a smokescreen so they could put in place a federal government. That's exactly what happened. Because let's see, I believe next we shall go
Can you
to right
go?
here.
I was going to say, the government at the time was actually in Philadelphia, wasn't it?
Scroll down just a little bit.
Yeah. I'm going to try to do that. I'm not used to his.
Likely, because it was still the Continental,
Okay.
the Confederation Congress, it said.
Okay, here, like I said, Article 7 of the Ordinance of 1787 will evidence that they had acquired the ability to tax directly. Here it goes. The inhabitants and settlers in said territory shall be subject to pay a part of the federal debts contracted or to be contracted and pay a proportional part of the expenses of government to be apportioned on them by Congress. See what I'm saying? They had gained the teeth, the ability to say, hand it over, where before they had to go to the state legislature.
Subject.
Huh?
Shall be subject. All of a sudden now you're
Oh yeah,
subject.
there you go. I never even realized that. Yeah, they use the word subject as a verb up here, but to be subject to something or someone
You
is
must
to
be
be
a
something or someone's subject. They've always played that game by switching between noun and verb. They use that word subject the same way in the 14th Amendment to fool
Well,
everybody.
my question is, when they became states, did the apportionment ability, did Congress lose their
They
right?
did. They would have.
Right, so,
They would have.
okay.
The problem
They
is,
usurped that? Are you saying they usurped that power then? To tax?
no, they didn't usurp it. They gained it. They gained it by.
But after they became states, they
well,
lost it.
they
Then
did lose it.
Congress then usurped that power to.
well, they didn't truly usurp it. They fooled us again because the way it happened. This is how it happened. First, there's a rule of there's three things that they got us on. The first thing is they confused us as to where we were. The next thing, they confused us as to what we were. Then they confused us as to who we were. Once you can confuse a person as to those three things, you can effectively enslave them by their mind, because there's two types of slavery, basically. There's physical slavery, where you have chains or you're behind bars. You know you can either accept it or fight it. You have to make a decision at that point. But the cruelest kind of slavery is the slavery of the mind, where they put chains around your mind with words. Because if you don't know you're enslaved, then you won't try to escape. And it's you don't even know you're enslaved. You got to know you're enslaved before you can start to fight it. And to be mentally enslaved, you don't. And that's exactly what they've done. They have mentally enslaved Americans. First, by confusing us as to where we are, as to making a difference between the United States and the United States of America, when they were both used the same way at one time. Then they made them different without anyone knowing. Then they waited probably about 100 years for the Civil War. And they used racism as an emotional issue to put in place U.S. citizenship. Because they also used the issue of racism and slavery in the Ordinance of 1787, because I didn't put it in here, but there is a stipulation in the Ordinance of 1787 where there would be no slavery allowed on federal territory. But we all know that there was slavery in the South, because, see, they couldn't outlaw slavery in the United States of America, but they could outlaw slavery in the United States. See, that's another point that we're never taught. But that was all a setup leading to the Civil War, where they were going to confuse us as to what we were. Go ahead.
There's actually, from my perspective, 3 United States.
Okay.
So what you just said, you said that they couldn't outlaw slavery in the United States of America,
Correct.
but they could outlaw it in the United States. Well,
Correct.
See, because basically my view in this ordinance, what does it say the style is going to be?
No. See, you're talking about the Articles of Confederation and Article 1, where they say the style of this confederacy shall be the United States of America. That's not mentioned here. The only thing that they mention here is the United States.
So what is that United States? Is it the United States of America, or is it the United States?
Well, let me ask you this. Where did they have the right to make law, Congress? Did they have the right to make any law in the United States of America? I just showed you that in order to go get money, that they had to go to the individual state legislatures.
But that was regarding money. Did they have the right to make any law?
Money or law.
States were sovereign, weren't they?
Yeah. The only thing the only thing Congress could do, as far as the states were concerned, is they could regulate interstate commerce. That was it. And commerce from outside, from my understanding. But any laws or anything within the states, they couldn't do anything. The fact that they couldn't collect money. I mean, let's just leave it the way it reads right here. I mean,
Okay, what does it read?
we need to go back.
Please.
Subject,
You
in
missed
Black's
something.
Law Dictionary, subject means men in free governments are subjects as well as citizens. As citizens, they enjoy rights and franchises. As
Cit-
subjects, they are bound to obey the laws. The term is little used in this sense in countries enjoying a republican
Yeah.
form of government.
I don't like the word citizen. Citizen is in citizenship. Admiralty. No, thank you. But at any rate, here we go. The taxes for paying that proportion shall be laid and levied by the authority and direction of the legislatures of the 7 states. So this is say that they may be levied by the authority and direction of the Congress of the United States, or it says several states. Several states is just another way to say the United States of America.
Okay, now, I claim, and it's, forgive me, but I must make the point because I think it's a stop for me. Prior to this document, the Articles of Confederation said the style shall be the United States of America. So I think, personally, just as we come up, okay, look, what does that say right there? You just said the United States of America, number 6.
Well, no-
Number 6.
Number 6, okay. Not a member of the Confederacy named in Article 1 of the Articles of Confederation as the United
No.
United
Okay,
States of
now,
America.
all I'm asking is whenever we come upon anything from here on, when it says the United States of America with a small T-H-E, that's referring to King George, in my opinion.
Okay, all right. Okay, look. You have your opinion. This is my presentation.
Okay.
You
I just make
hash it out. You hash it out any way you want in your head. I'm going to
Okay.
give it to you the way I understand it.
Go ahead.
And I'm reading it directly, so I can't see it any other way. I mean, you want to nitpick about THE and everything. I mean, that's your shtick. I'm giving it to you the way it reads to me. Like I said, this does not say that they're under the authority and direction of the United States. It says under the legislatures of the several states. First of all, legislatures. There was only one legislature for the United States, or Congress. It was only one legislature. When they're using it plurally, they must be talking about all 13 colonies. I mean, that's what I get. I don't know.
Okay, thank you. So the
Okay.
Northwest Ordinance, they can start taxing because of the fact
Right,
it's
but
territory.
where is that authority to tax that? We've already established it wasn't in the several states. It was on the newly given property that King George gave them. And I contend he gave it to them specifically so they could have this excuse to be able to tax someplace with the intent to eventually fool everybody as to the difference in the United States and the United States of America, because that's where we're at today. Okay, so let's see. We go to I was on what, I was on where, what, and
I
who.
find it interesting.
Okay, so he's heard it before. So what is free man or a subject? And that came at the end of the Civil War with the whole thing about slavery. And you see, everybody thinks that Abraham Lincoln was this great emancipator. You know, he freed the slaves. Actually, I think he was a criminal. He was a bit of a scumbag, because even today, if a man spends 10, 15 years in jail or something, you just don't kick him out on the street. You realize that he has to adjust back to society. Well, here you've got a group of people that they've never really been in society. They've always lived under someone else's care, you know, provide housing, work. It may have been cruel and so forth, but in a way, they were still taken care of. They were somebody's property. I mean, if you pay for it, you're going to take care of it to some extent. All of a sudden, they're kicked out into the world, and there was no way. I mean, I guess they should have had Abraham Lincoln should have provided for them better than he did. But I think he knew it was a setup with him as well, because what happened is that these people were now out in the world without any political status. So if someone did anything wrong to them, they had no recourse to the courts. There were only 2 states that were giving full citizenship to any blacks before the Civil War. They were Pennsylvania and New York. At the end of the Civil War, when Abraham, well, actually he released them supposedly before as to help cause the craziness in the South. But he should have made stipulations that once these people have been released, every state in the Union or the United States of America will give these people state citizenship.
You don't have that authority.
Well, he was already fighting the war with them and kicked their butt. So why couldn't he have told them to do what Pennsylvania and New York had already did? But he didn't do that because what it did was it now gave the federal government, instead of saying that, they said, well, we're going to make a new citizenship for these newly freed blacks. And that was U.S. citizenship. So now they put in place U.S. citizenship, and over here you've got state citizenship and also free inhabitant status, which is a non-political status. And the idea was to have that in place and let a few generations pass, and then we're going to sucker everybody in. Well, they were really after white Americans with U.S. citizenship. You know, that's the whole racism, emotional thing, you know. Most white Americans at the time probably said, yeah, what do I care if they put this U.S. citizenship in place? It's not for me. Little did they know that eventually down the road, 4 or 5 generations later, all Americans, you stand on in the corner of any major city in this country and you ask any random person, do you know what citizenship was in place before U.S. citizenship? They'll draw a blank. No one knows.
No, everybody assumes that it was always U.S. citizenship.
Exactly, because another thing that they did was they told us that the Articles of Confederation were replaced by the Constitution of the United States of America, which makes it so people just don't even consider it. Another thing is they called the breakaway Southern states the Confederacy, which was to put a bad connotation to the Confederacy. When the original Confederacy was the 13 colonies, you know. So, okay, so they put in place, you know, what to confuse us with U.S. citizenship. Now we skip ahead about another 50 years or so, and we have the Christmas Eve, 1913. The Federal Reserve Act comes into place, and they steal the money supply from the Americans, from America.
Golden Repeal Act?
Well, no, they just passed the Federal Reserve Act on Christmas Eve in 1913, when they shouldn't have done that because there were only like maybe 3 or 4 people there to do it. And it was passed. Then all of a sudden they started playing with the money supply and they crashed the economy into the Depression, the Great Depression. They did that.
Crash. That's the thing. What the banks were doing, because it's always been the bankers have been in control, kind of. But
yeah.
The banks that came across from Europe into America at that particular time were going through a business cycle, and what the Federal Reserve Act was supposed to do was to equalize and stabilize the money system to prevent this business cycle from occurring. Because what was happening, and it happened in the late 1800s, there was a recession, there was a boom, and then there was a crash and a bust, and then there was another boom, and then there's another crash and a bust. It's the banks that are doing that on purpose. And then they said, oh, well, the banks will come along and we'll stabilize it. And we'll make it so there is no boom and bust.
Because the problem I have the solution.
But
I don't.
Yes, and then they that.
Yeah.
And they actually made it worse, because then 1929 appeared, the Roaring Twenties, there was the big boom, and then we had the 1929 bust, 1931 crash, 1934 was the FDR, what did he do, what was it called?
That was the Social Security Act.
No, there was something else he did before that, the 192, where he took the gold basically from
Okay,
the
I
people.
forget. Well, getting back to, you know, where we're at, we're getting ready to get the who right now. But as far as, you know, the whole thing about the bankers, they always give you a good reason, and then there's always the real reason. I can tell the real reason was to put in place the Social Security Act, to starve everybody out. They had already suckered everybody off of the land into the cities, because America had been a largely agrarian society for most of its history. All of a sudden they start this. They made it so that it just wasn't being on the farm and on the land wasn't where it was at. It moved into the cities, and that's where we're at today. We're almost all urban. But what happened was once they crashed everything, they gave people were starving and would do anything probably to eat. They introduced the Social Security program, And with that, well, it goes also back partially, the who also goes back to the Act of 1871 where they created a federal corporate government. And built into the word corporation is corpse, or a dead thing. So the dead can't speak to the living. Well, we're assuming that the dead can speak to the dead, but that's basically what they've done. You've got a corporate government or a dead entity. In order for them to do business with the living man, they've got to fool you into being somehow having a corpse as well. Therein comes the old capital name, but the whole Social Security Act was part of that by getting you to swear to be a U.S. citizen. Because only U.S. citizens can participate in Social Security. So there comes the who. Are you the all caps or are you the upper and lower case? So there you got it. Mm-hmm. The where are you? If you don't know where you're at, that's the first thing they've done to disorient you. What are you? Are you a free man or are you a subject? And who are you? Are you that all caps or upper and lower case? So that all comes from, it all started with King George and his Trojan horse of the Northwest Territories. So any comments, questions?
And this, I think, goes right back to what you just talked about, the have to create the corpse. It goes right back to your
Well, that's actually, as far as I'm concerned,
age of majority discussion.
well, that's actually to me, that's a satanic ritual. When you go to court and that judge calls you and you answer to the all-cap version, it's dead. That's necromancy.
But people will often wonder, what are they doing that for? And that age of majority thing that we talked about with the afterbirth, and it's left behind, that's the dead you. That's part of you that didn't go on to live.
Okay, I didn't think
Right,
of
it's
that.
drying up
Which they took
someplace.
control of.
Which they took
That's
control
what
of.
they're
And
claiming was the physical piece that they own of you, and it's all together mixed up.
but it's dead now.
I understand.
So I think
So
that's,
they named that,
yeah,
and they own that.
yeah.
And you own part of it because it was you, but they're the ones in control of you.
Because we never claimed.
Yeah, but that, at that point, the dead supposedly are speaking to the dead version of you. So that's how they get around the whole corporation thing through that.
So I do have just a question about Articles of Confederation. Then that was in 17.
That was actually the same year as the ordinance, I believe, or a year before. It wasn't
Articles
long.
of Confederation, I think, were 1781. Then we had, is that right?
Yeah, the Articles of Confederation are 1781.
Yeah, okay.
Okay,
so
all right, I'm wrong.
so this is,
The definitive treaty of peace was 1783.
which goes to his King George point that he's making, right? So King George, so here's these scoundrel 13 colonies from the UK position, Great Britain at that time.
Yeah.
Right? And so Great Britain, his point is that Great Britain is saying, all right, what are we going to do? We're sending all these guys over there. These guerrilla fighters are bothering us with their Indian tactics, hiding behind trees.
Not all of it, but they knew they would have to deal with that.
I'm like glossing over, trying to get. So that was 1781. So the war was not over. We were still fighting that war, which we had declared in 1776. So what he's pointing out is, from my perspective, his point, which I agree, is the colonies were now free inhabitants. And the only way George could tax us now was only through duties.
Yeah, excellent.
But he hadn't made peace yet. So he made peace in 1783. And part of what's in the definitive treaty of peace is what? The land of the Northwest Ordinance, I think.
Yeah, I think it was. I think he did research.
So that goes to your point about the Trojan horse. So George is saying, all right, how are we going to lay a trap for these people that have won their freedom to run around these 13 colonies? So the land of the Northwest Ordinance was put into the definitive treaty of peace.
So who
Why?
owned that land?
Great Britain, I believe, who won it from the French.
Okay.
because they were fighting something. I mean, there was all kind, I'd have to look, but
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure Great Britain had the right at that moment in their mind to give it to us. Now, there were Indians out there, it was unsettled.
Mhm.
So, 1783, George said, okay, you guys we're going to stop fighting. I'm going to keep the seas, control of the seas. You're going to have the land and you're going to be free and you're not subject to us anymore. But we're going to include some land out to the to the Mississippi.
As a peace offer.
Right. As a way to repay, and so that ownership goes to be shared, I guess, between I have to read the definitive treaty of peace, who accepted title of that land and control at that point. So then, excuse me?
The Confederacy did.
Okay, so the Confederacy itself, which was the group of states, so then they now needed a federal government to administrate that land, to bring it into statehood at some point down the road. Then there was the Land Ordinance of 1785, 2 years later. That's prior to the Northwest Ordinance. The Land Ordinance of 1785 is when they put everything into 640-acre squares, the mile squares with the 36 townships.
Okay.
Okay? And then they
Meaning
start...
36 sections to a township.
Exactly, right. Well, right, 36 townships.
No, 36 sections in a township. A
Oh,
township
okay.
is 6 miles by 6 miles.
Okay, so a township is 1 square mile.
No, a section's a square mile.
Oh, so a 6 by 6.
Right.
So a township is 36 square miles.
Yeah, 36
6
square miles.
6 square miles.
Well, it's 36 square miles.
Oh, 36, 6 by 6.
6 by
36 square miles. Okay, so that's a township. Gotcha. So that's so then they had this surveyor go out. Jefferson was involved in it. Then they went ahead and just did it throughout the whole colonies too. They just started with the point of where the Northwest Ordinance started, from Pennsylvania, Ohio, and West Virginia, which was Virginia at the time. That point. 1785, Land Ordinance. Along comes his 1787 Northwest Ordinance. And in that, those people that are there are subjects, and this newly formed taxing authority came in under the federal government. Am I correct? Is that your
That
perspective?
makes sense, yeah.
That's kind of where you...
That's basically what I said, yeah.
Okay, so now, what happens then? 1787. 2 years later is what? 1789. What do they do to us in 1789? The Judiciary Act and the Constitution. So the Constitution then is put into effect. And I don't see anywhere after the Articles of Confederation that the United States of America is mentioned. After that, it becomes the United States of America. And when I got back my paperwork from the State Department, it's in upper and lower case. It says United States of America, which is British run, or Vatican, Vatican Crown. So it goes to his point that when we see in all the information after the Articles of Confederation, the Land Ordinance, the Northwest Ordinance, the Constitution, the Judiciary Act, it's always basically, forget the THE, it's always United States of America or United States.
So the Articles of Confederation became when 1789 became the Constitution?
No, that's
Or-
what they tell us. That's the point we're making here.
Yeah, well, I probably may have stopped the presentation a little early. We could have gone a little further.
You have time.
You got time?
You have
Okay.
time.
Well, another thing that Eduardo Rivera revealed was that we've been taught in school that the Constitution of the United States of America is a standalone document. You read it and you're going to get the proper context, supposedly, of what,
Gotcha.
what's it goes. But that's not the truth. The truth is, what he found is that there's 4 documents that comprise the organic laws of the United States of America, and that's the way they're printed in the United States Code in the very first chapter there, and they are the Declaration of Independence, the Articles of Confederation, the Ordinance of 1787, or the Northwest Territory, ever what you want to call it, and then the Constitution of the United States of America. What his studies have shown is in order to get a proper overall perspective of where everything stands, you must read all 4 together.
Does it
Also-
become 5? Sorry to interrupt. Does it become 5? Because then you've got the Bill of Rights after that.
No, that's included
Oh, is it?
in the Constitution of the United States of
Okay.
America. Okay, here's another thing that he is basically brings out. The Declaration of Independence and the Articles of Confederation apply to the United States of America. The Ordinance of 1787 and the Constitution of the United States of America apply in the United States. That's the federal part. And it makes sense because the federal government basically started with the Ordinance of 1787, and then it did mention in the preamble that it's to form a temporary government. So where is the more permanent government formed? I missed that up there. It shows in the Constitution of the United States of America that it was the manifestation of the permanent government for the United States of America. Another thing is that the Constitution of the United States of America was misnamed, as far as I'm concerned, on purpose. But they give us clues in the title of the Organic Laws of the United of the chapter of the Organic Laws of the United States of America in the first book of the United States Code, that they give the proper full names of the first 3 documents, but the Constitution of the United States of America is given as the Constitution of the United States. And I contend that they're telling us the truth there. Because the Articles of Confederation have not been repealed and they are still in full force and effect, and they mention in Article 1 the Confederacy, gives it its proper name, the United States of America. So that has to be the proper Constitution of the United States of America, while the Constitution of the United States of America is so named at the top is actually the Constitution of the United States. Plus, the fact that the 14th Amendment mentions what a U.S. citizen is. Why would someone in America care what a citizen of the United States is? When they mention in Article 4 of the Articles of Confederation what a state citizen is and the non-political status of free inhabitant. So there you have it.
Is that on your?
So
It's in there.
So-
we're so busy defending ourselves with the Constitution.
Yeah.
Isn't it? Well,
Yeah.
I've always said,
Right,
when
yeah.
I was doing my teaching and radio shows, the Constitution doesn't
It's not
apply to
yours.
us. It's never applied to
Yeah.
us. Why?
The Articles of Confederation are what you want to claim, if anything.
Because we're not U.S. citizens.
Yeah.
And even if we were, it's a contract, and we were never part of it.
Think about all the movies
We
where
never
you
signed
get
it.
the person in there
We
going,
never-
I
The
have rights.
The
I'm
Constitution.
a United States citizen.
Yeah. Which Constitution? You know, that's the question to ask. But-
And look at this. This is Article 1. The style of this confederacy shall be the United States of America.
Yes.
And yet, on your passport, it just says
Yeah.
United States of America.
Yeah.
That's all it says.
Which is under the Law of Admiralty, the British Navy.
And I was looking for the definitive treaty of peace. I have it, but it's in a GIF file. I was going to convert it to a PDF so I could highlight it, but I haven't done that yet.
Well, I have another question then, but it relates to the taxation, because I was looking at there under Article 1, Section 8, with the right to tax. That was the original power of Congress. So in that case, that's the
That's the
federal
That's the birth of the
constitution.
federal. Yeah.
And that's where they were giving Congress the right under Article 1, Section 8, to direct taxation
There you
of
go.
people.
Yep, that's the one. It's in there.
Now,
but it had
I
to be
just
on-
want to add on to it though. Trump, when he came into office, the first thing he did was bring out the taxation, was it a renewal or something act, and it became very important for a lot of people because there was a distinction. The power of the legislation gave its source from Article 1, Section 8, whereas all other taxation law apparently got its power from the 16th Amendment of the Constitution.
And that was only for corporations, but guess what? They tricked us into being corporations. So
Yes,
there you
but
go.
that's what I'm saying though. This new Trump Tax Act has reverted the power to the original Article 1, Section 8 power, not the 16th Amendment, which has taken all the power away from the IRS. Because they always take you to court
To the
under
16th Amendment.
16th Amendment powers. So basically now the IRS can't take you to court under that Tax Act.
Yeah, well,
Because
it's
it doesn't
only,
have
But
any
he
power.
only, if the Constitution doesn't apply to us, whatever Trump did,
Yeah, it's irrelevant, I know,
Okay,
in that
just-
regard.
just
But what I'm
clear.
saying is,
You're
that
just
what he
making
has
the point.
done, even for US citizens, he's taken the power away from the IRS.
and put it in his pocket,
And,
So-
or in the pocket
so-
of the Congress.
Congress.
So
put it
what,
back to
what
Congress.
Chong is saying here, I just want to clarify it for everybody and then possibly the YouTube video, is that under the Articles of Confederation, you have a bunch of states, okay? And it says here, Article 2, each state retains its sovereignty, freedom, and independence, and every power, jurisdiction, and right, which is not by this Confederation expressly delegated to the United States and Congress assembled. Okay, so then you have the states, and you have the United States and Congress assembled. Because the United States and Congress assembled is the federal government.
Question.
What?
Are you saying, you just said United States, did you mean the United States of America when you said that?
I was going to get that.
Sorry.
You have the states, and United States and Congress assembled. Okay, the states and the federal government. The federal government, under the Articles of Confederation, is called United States and Congress assembled. Okay, and if you go through this thing, it says United States. It says which by this Confederation expressly delegated to United States and Congress assembled. Okay, and so then Article 4 talks about the free inhabitants of these states shall be entitled to all the privileges and immunities as citizens in the several states. And then it goes on, talks about on property of the United States or either of them. Okay,
sounds very fluid.
United States is talking about the federal government. Either of them is talking about the state governments. Okay, in the original Article 13 amendment, it says talks about United States or either of them. Okay, United States is the federal government. Either of them is the state
so it
government.
shows that there's two.
So there's two of them. That's right.
They're different.
That's right.
Oh,
It goes on. Here, it talks about in determining questions in United States and Congress assembled, each state shall have one vote. Okay? No state without the consent of United States and Congress assembled. Okay, so that's talking about the federal government. And nor shall the United States and Congress assembled, or any of them. So they're talking again,
About
federal
us.
government, state governments. It goes on. All throughout here I've highlighted. United States and Congress assembled. United States and Congress assembled. United States and Congress assembled. It does talk about United States in a lot of places, okay? And that's just, they're talking, they're instead of putting in Congress assembled, it's just the United States. It's still talking about the federal government. The only time it talks about the states, it'll say either of them or any of them. Okay, so it'll say United States or any of them. So then United States is the federal government and the states is any of them.
So it almost sounds like the United States only existed when Congress got together, when they
Assembled.
convened, when
That's
they
right.
assembled.
That's
the
right.
only time it existed.
That's right.
Other than that, it was state.
Originally, all it was the federal government, but there was if you go to the Northwest Ordinance, it was signed by a commissioner or something like that. It was signed by a commissioner. We'll have to get I'll get the Northwest Ordinance. It was
okay,
signed by,
may I make another comment?
yeah.
Okay, another thing that I really wanted to bring out with this presentation.
But anyways, go ahead. I'm just not done making my comment.
Okay,
Go ahead. Go
was
ahead.
that the federal government only has jurisdiction on federal land. That's what I was.
Because the states are sovereign.
Well, to this day,
Okay. Well,
there's
when
no-
I'm done.
the organic
Just
laws
don't
of the
let me
United
forget.
States of
Okay.
America can't be changed. I mean,
That's a
that'd
great
be very
education.
difficult. So nowhere in there nowhere in the original organic laws of the United States of America has the federal government ever been given jurisdiction over non-federal territory to this day. So what I'm trying to say is that every time a policeman pulls you over, it always mentions on the citation that he writes, county of. That county of is not the original. I don't even know if there were counties in the de jure America.
Yeah, there were.
Okay. Well, now the counties that they're so there are two counties now, and there's a federal county, which, as I mentioned in here, to find it, you call the tax assessor and ask them for all the property that is owned by the United States of America, and some counties will have that, and that in fact is the only place where that citation actually applies. Unless you're a U.S. citizen, then you've got what's known as the overlay. The whole universe is an overlay as far as your relationship to the U.S. government if you're a U.S. citizen.
Right.
But if you're not, they have to have territorial jurisdiction on the spot that you're being approached.
I understand.
Without it, you ask them, do they have territorial jurisdiction? And most people aren't aware that there's a difference between the United States and the United States of America, so they're very seldom asked the question of territorial jurisdiction.
Problem is,
No.
no, you ask any cop that.
Well,
Well, say, yeah, I've got territorial. This is where I
Well,
work.
that's
I've got
because
jurisdiction.
he doesn't know.
He
the
doesn't
difference.
know, but
Yeah.
that thing is, it's not going to stop him writing a ticket.
Well, that's
because
true. That's true. But you can
He
always.
thinks he has,
But, yeah.
which is also the good.
It's actually bad because now you got to go through the whole.
No, I was talking about the doctrine. It was the
Now-
faith doctrine.
Remember how I was talking about United States and United States was Congress assembled. It's both used for talking about the federal government. Okay, and if it's talking about the states, it says either of them or any of them.
And also several states is used sometimes too.
It could be the several states. Well, actually, I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it in several states because the several states in U.S. code is referring to the territories.
You could be. Okay.
Anyways,
Okay.
so this is the Constitution here. The Constitution of the United States of America.
Which is actually the Constitution of the United States.
Actually, in some documents it just says United
Yeah,
States,
it
Constitution
does.
of the United States. But it says, we the people of the United States. So, gee, that sounds like we the people in the federal territories. You know, really, is what it sounds like. But do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America.
So I also heard that the Constitution
Four.
should have been for the United States.
Well, it was there.
It says right here it says Constitution for the United States of America.
It means it's an
But
additional.
so I'm not sure how much it matters when you say one or the other. I'm not sure, but
Well, one of them is of, and the other is for. I think for means it's an additional tool.
is I'm taking from you. For is imposing on you.
Well,
Right?
it's for. Well, I
It's
think
of
that
the people, by the people, and for the
Well,
people.
but
They
again,
do different things.
you get to understand the way I'm reading this is it's federal citizens that are writing this Constitution. So what's that got to do with the states? I mean, anytime they talk about United States, and let's go to the. Does this have all of the? Probably not. I got this from the federal government's website, from Office of Law Revision Council, and so yeah, this is just the Constitution. Oh no. Article 13. Right. Yeah. This is the Constitution. This is Article 13. Proposed amendments. Oh, this is proposed amendments not ratified by the states. Okay. well, anyway, so there's more than just the Constitution there. Yeah, these are all amendments. That's all in the matrix.